2, and 1. You're live.
Welcome to Wizard World Virtual Experiences Rewatch Wednesday. I'm Jerry Milani, and today we're going to rewatch the panel that I hosted on Sunday with 9 members of the cast of Little House on the Prairie, and that was a great time. In fact, it was our most watched Q&A of the 180 plus that we've done here at Wizard World Virtual Experiences. It's a show that, lasted 9 years from the 70s into the 80s, and it was at a time when folks didn't have a whole lot of different options of what to watch, and it was something that the whole family got together, talked about, discussed. I know it was the first show that I really watched, kind of an adult show that I watched with my parents and my sister, and something we would talk about, and it's something that I think touches a lot of people of a certain age in the same way that it did me. So I was proud to be part of that panel, to kind of bring it all together, and also to be bringing you this Rewatch Wednesday party tonight. Little House on the Prairie was must-see TV, and we're going to have a little discussion tonight about the panel, run a couple of clips from it, and talk to an expert or two about their impressions of the show as well. I want to remind everyone tonight at 9 o'clock, we're going to have the Animaniacs panel rewatch, which was a lot of fun. Mike G, who did that panel, will be with us for that as well. Tomorrow, we're going to have Tala Ash joining for a rewatch of the Legends of Tomorrow panel from a couple of months back. Tala's doing some live video chats, some autographs, some recorded videos, and virtual photo ops this weekend. So she's come back with us to do that rewatch. Also, Whiz Quiz tomorrow night, that fun quiz with Mike G as well. Next Saturday, Chris Kattan from Saturday Night Live. And then January 30th, doubleheader with the Stargate, SG-1 and Atlantis cruise, and Dolph Lundgren, the action hero. So a lot of great stuff coming up. Go to wizardworldvirtual.com for all of that. And all of the celebrities that we had in our panel from the Little House on the Prairie from this weekend, they'll also all be doing their live video chats on Sunday, this coming Sunday. So make sure that you have a couple more days. Make sure if you want to get one of those, you log right into wizardworldvirtual.com and be able to pick those up right now. They're doing autographs, recorded videos, and the virtual photo ops as well. And Wizard World Vault is a place, of course, that we've culled 20 plus years of Wizard World comic conventions, pop culture conventions. We've got the best stuff from those shows and more, all at wizardworldvault.com. Tonight, I am joined, in addition to Mike G, who you know from our Wizard World shows, who's also running tech for us today, doing a double duty today. I'm also pleased to be joined by Chance Bartels, who's with the Nostalgic Pod Blast. Hi, Chance.
How's it going, gentlemen?
Great to see you. Great to see you. So, Nostalgic Pod Blast, you can check out at Pod Blast Podcast, and it's a show on fistfulofradio.com on Saturday and Sunday, and it's a perfect fit, really, Chance, to have you as part of this because you're a big fan of this show. Tell me about your fandom for Little House, kind of how you got involved with it, and why you love it so much.
I'm about the same age as you, Jerry, and in one name, Melissa Sue Anderson. I had a big crush on her growing up.
Yes.
And that's what really drew me into the show. And then years later, when it was released on Blu-ray starting in 2013, I rediscovered it and watched every episode. I bought every single set, and they're behind me here if you can see them. All the episodes, and there went the Stormtrooper. But here's what the Blu-rays look like. I thought it was just great family entertainment. I loved Michael Landon's writing and directing. Those were my favorite episodes of all, the ones that he directed and wrote. But I just really liked the family aspect of it. And it's really timeless. And this is going to sound silly. It's not dated. And the reason I say that is it was shot in the 1970s and early 80s, but there's no bell bottoms. It's all the late 1800s, after the Civil War. And I just love the pioneering spirit and the stories, the drama. And there's actually some science fiction elements to the show in terms of the cast and a couple of horror elements, things that the cast members did in their careers and how it pertains, I'll get into later. But I just love the show. I love the cast. And there's certain episodes that just really stuck with me growing up.
You talk about the cast. We had 9 cast members, which for us to be able to get 9 of these cast members, including Melissa Gilbert, who is really the protagonist of it. I know that, as you said, Michael Landon kind of ran the show, and with him and Karen Grassley together, and we'll talk a little bit about them, and we'll replay some of the reactions that the cast had to talking about those folks. She really, you see it through her eyes, just as the book series was obviously written through her eyes. But I thought it was interesting. She really probably elevated this panel just one step up. It was great to have everybody else on there, but then when she was added on, I think it made it very interesting for a lot of folks, and I'm sure for you as well.
Oh yeah, Melissa Gilbert, she's the best. I was so excited when I heard that you had secured her to be on the panel, and she was just lovely, great, great conversation, and you did an excellent job.
Oh, thank you. It's a show that that I really enjoyed growing up, like I said, and it was something that you could watch with your parents. And I was probably 7 when I probably first started watching it, 6 or 7, and just remember asking about what year is that supposed to be, and that's the olden days, and why is this, and where's the telephone, and you're learning as you're 6 and 7 years old, growing up, learning what's around you. In fact, we asked on the panel, I thought interesting, you're going around getting everybody's impressions. And I asked Wendy Turnbaugh, she played young little Gracie. I said, did you grow up, knowing there was a phone? Like what were you learning? You were growing up while you were living in the 1870s, while you were living in the 1970s, which I thought was fun. But like if it's same for me, is that it's a show that I also didn't reconnect with for a long time, because it wasn't one that was necessarily on either the channels I was watching, or it's in that little pantheon of shows that were really good in the 70s, emergency shows like that until these digital channels and until releases on DVDs came, $6 Million Man was like that. It wasn't really on most networks. It was hard to find shows like that you knew were good. And you hoped they were good. You hoped that they were as good as when you grew up. And this is one that is good. It's as good as when you were watching it when you grew up, for sure.
Jerry, I remember it would air on TBS in the early 80s and into the late 80s. And then it wound up, of course, on the Hallmark Network. And it's been syndicated in the last 5 to 10 years all over the place. And I'm glad it's getting exposure again, because it's so well written, so well done.
Yeah, and that's probably where I remember seeing it the most, like you said, Chance, when it kind of played in reruns. I'm similar age of Wendy Turnbaugh, and so was very young when she was on the show. I remember my mom was super into Highway to Heaven and that Michael Landon TV show. And so I think it was through that then we started watching not only Little House, but old episodes of Bonanza on like Nick at Night. And so my mom was very much a Michael Landon fan. And, they talked in the panel, actually, one of the best parts of the panel was everyone kind of reminiscing on Michael and how all the ladies back then and men were fawning over Michael Landon. And so
with his shirt off.
Yeah. And so I don't have like very specific, like full season memories, but I have like such, strong images burned in. Like I remember the snowstorm, and because we actually were taught young the original stories, the Laura Ingalls books, and how, Anne of Green Gables and that Disney Channel series. And so that was my entry point, where like the books and the history and the stories, and then kind of watching the show as like a TV show version of all that stuff. So that was cool. We have a ton of fans, Jerry. I just want to check in with some of our fans here watching, tuning in from all over the place: Massachusetts, Philly, California, but also France, Canada in the house. Tuning in right now, Argentina, Joaquin Juarez, tuning in. Some of the fun comments already coming through from Arlene. Little House on the Prairie has a huge international following, which with an upsurge, especially during the pandemic. Some of the cast members talked about that. Quality television at its finest, and the cast members are down to earth and generous with their time. And again, a lot of folks tuning in, just saying that they're currently watching it or they remember watching it. Hey, it's Deirdre on YouTube said, watching Little House right now on Hallmark, like you said, Chad. So yeah, people are rediscovering the show yet again.
It's Excellent. A distinctly American show, but it's something that can translate to people easily in other countries, and whether that's their impression of the American West. I mean, I know that a whole generation grew up with that being their impression of the American West. I know American Masters, I guess, just did a Laura Ingalls Wilder series or show on PBS, and I'm not sure I want to watch it now, because I'm hearing some of the comments about it, how PBS and American Masters, they're pretty straight shooters with things like that, and maybe all the nostalgia that we have for the Prairie may not be quite the same as what was on Little House of the Prairie, but that's what this show was supposed to depict in its own way. So
and they didn't have electricity. They didn't have all these modern conveniences that we have. That's what I liked. In certain episodes, you saw them get the telephone for the first time, or the phonograph. You know, you saw all these inventions, and it was so real. You felt like you were living in those times.
You had baseball that looked a little like baseball, but not really like baseball. It kind of looked like baseball might have been in 1880. Football, certainly the football game that they played was a very different game than you might see, being played today. So they did, I think, a great job of staying in period. And like you said, there's no bell bottoms. You can't tell that it's 1970s for 1870s. That show could have been made 20 years later, 20 years before, and had that same feel because it was really set in that era, and they did a good job of staying completely in that era. So we're talking about some of our the impact of the show on us right now, the three of us, but we also asked that question of the cast, and we have a clip now we're going to show. Mike's going to run with some of the celebrities, what the impact was on them doing the show.
I was a tiny little person when the show started. I was 9 years old. I had done a lot of commercials. My mom, my whole family was in the business, and so I just sort of followed. A longer story than that, but I went through the regular audition process for this, and in my family, the decision was that I was never going to be away from school that much. So commercial seemed the perfect way to do that. But when Little House came along, it was so special. My mom and dad and everybody in the family said, well, let's see what happens. But kind of thinking there's so many girls auditioning, it'll never happen, and it did. And I mean, to say that it changed, it did more than change my life. It made my life what it is. And it's not just the opportunity that I had as a professional to learn and grow and then continue on and learn how to produce and learn how to direct and learn how to do all the other things I did. But it was also the opportunity to work with all of these amazing performers. I mean, the people who were there when I was little, like Charlotte, to have an opportunity to be a child and to be treated as a child and loved and adored as a child, but yet respected as a peer professionally by an extraordinarily talented adult like Charlotte, like Karen, like Michael, like all of these people. It really gave me a lot of confidence in my ability as a professional. And I learned so much personally, like trying to explain the influence on the show on my life in a paragraph or 2 minutes is virtually impossible. This is, and
your time's up now.
Well, and then there's Rodimus, who came along later on. And, never mind. I'm just going to let it go. I think it's up to Dean to tell me to shut up, isn't it?
Well, I don't think I ever do that. Do I?
No, never. No, never. Never in a million. I totally made that up. I'm just making it up because why not? Never.
Sure.
No, God, no.
So yeah, Dean, tell me about you. You were a little older, but still young in the business, and you came a couple of years
very young. I mean, here, Melissa started at 9 years old on the show, but she was already had quite a career that had been underway. So, and by the time I got there at 23 years old, Melissa's 15, and Melissa is vastly experienced career-wise. So it was always a game of catch up, trying to learn on the job. And I feel very fortunate, as we all do, that we were surrounded by an incredible group of people who could do so much to help us all be better, to look better, to sound better, to make the situations more real. All of it was an incredible gift. And I look back on Little House through now for Melissa, it's 46 years going on 47 years of connection to this project now. And for Allison as well. For me, it's 40 going on 42 years. It has been the great gift of my life to be associated with this and then have the opportunity to do other things related to Laura Ingalls Wilder and support that legacy has been a wonderful opportunity to give back. And the love that has come to me, to all of us as part of being associated with this has just been, it never goes away, and it never ceases to amaze. And the gratitude that I feel for it is just off the charts.
And I'll chime in really quickly and just add, and then all you guys can I know you're going to agree and add this into what you have to say, but now coming around to where we are in dealing with what we've been dealing with since last March, there's been a resurgence of a love for what we did those many years ago that has warmed my heart in a way I didn't ever expect.
Yeah.
But before I turn to Hersha to keep going, just on those same lines, we have a fan, Esmeralda Weatherford, to 2020, in one of our chat rooms, saying, as a little girl, she'd look forward to each new episode. It always taught her something about life. Today, she owns every episode, watches it with her kids. So just like you guys are saying, and what you just said there, Melissa, is it's connecting with people now 40 plus years later. Hersha, tell me a little about your experience.
Hi. First of all, I just want to ditto what Melissa just said, and that what's happened within this last year. I've gotten so many fan things, and not just fans, but people and family that are reconnecting with Little House. It's been very, very important, and people are rediscovering it again and again and again. Not that they ever lost it. With me, it's I was old. I was not. I was already.
I was old.
When I got on the show. So, and the thing that I think getting that part the most, and I've said this before on when we've had our reunions, it spoiled me rotten for what came after. I worked pretty much before, but after, I mean, there's just no way. The way that ship was run, not only beautifully creative, I mean, incredibly, gifted in every sense, in every sense, in every way, in the writing, in the casting, in the lighting, in every kind of sense. And then we were out of there by 6 o'clock. And then I would go do a movie of the week or something, and they'd be going and they'd be bitching and I mean, so it really did spoil me for the things coming after. So,
Yeah.
There's a lot to unpack there, but I love what Hersha was saying about how what happened at this show, everyone had changed their lives, it changed their careers, but the comparison to how this show was run as opposed to what other shows that they might have worked on were like. Michael Landon, and we'll get to some memories of him specifically in a little bit. Michael Landon, Chance, this was his baby. This was the Jack Lord with Hawaii Five-0 type thing. Like, this was Michael Landon's show, and he ran it, and it was strict, and it made the quality the very highest it could be.
That he did right after Bonanza as Little Joe. He didn't skip a beat. He did the pilot for Little House that Melissa talked about with you in your panel. And then he went right into this Headstrong, and it was a big hit, 9 seasons on NBC. And, I really liked Allison's character too, as little Nellie, of course, the foil for the girls. And my favorite episode has to be Bunny from season 3, where Nellie takes a harrowing ride down a hill in a wheelchair after she's faked an injury, after she abused her horse named Bunny. And so Laura Ingalls, innocent, sweet little Laura Ingalls, pushes her down the hill in a wheelchair into a pond, exposing the fact that she's not really handicapped. She can walk. And it was just a scene that stuck with me. That's one of the original episodes I watched when I was like 4 or 5 years old, and it just always stuck with me. But a little factoid about Allison, with child stars, parents like to get both kids into the business once one has had some success. And did you know Allison's older brother, Stefan, was the kid in Land of the Giants, the Irwin Allen show. Yeah. He was the orphan kid. And then also Richard Bowl, who played Mr. Olson, was the doc on Irwin Allen's Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea. So I had to dip into a little fantasy there for any Wizard World fans out there that dig sci-fi like I do. Sorry.
Well, and Melissa mentioned her brother winds up being Nellie's brother. So yeah, there was all kinds of fun connections there.
And Willie was a great character too. We'll get a little bit later talking about Allison and being evil, but you just brought up a point, little innocent Laura. Nellie brought out the other side of Laura. There were a couple times there where Laura, and it's, you know, you got, remember, she's a young kid that even if she's this goody kid, like everyone has their breaking point, right? And she wasn't above trying to do some things to kind of, you know, subvert Nellie a little bit, but Nellie was mean.
Mean as a snake. And Michael Landon directed that episode, Bunny, by the way. But can I just quickly mention a great episode in season 1? Ann Archer guest starred in it. She played the Doc Baker's love interest. It's called Doctor's Lady. And anyone out there that loves good acting knows who Ann Archer is. She was a big star back in the day. And her mom is Marjorie Lord. But anyway, that was just a beautiful love story from season 1. Season 1, episode 17, Doctor's Lady. It's just a good one.
Love Doc Baker.
I think like a lot of good shows, there was always, you know, during a season that would have 22, 23 episodes, they could focus one episode on one of these characters once you got to know them. And I think Little House did a good job of finding an episode and finding a storyline that fit for that character. And while, you know, we may never have heard of that love interest again later in the series, it was something that let each of these actors, and look, we met 9 of them here, but there were a lot of other ones that some have passed on and some just weren't on the thing with us on Sunday. But I mean, it's a cast of standout characters, standout actors, starting with the kids. I mean, this is a show that, you know, the kid actors in this are really good actors. I mean, I mean, and some of them, it was their first or second time that they were doing, you know, first or second role. It wasn't even like they were all necessarily veterans. They were just very believable.
Jeannie Four says so much chemistry with the cast was one of their standout, you know, sort of memories of the show. And I can't remember, Jerry, who said it on the panel, but one of the actors who played the children, wasn't Melissa or Dean, I don't think, mentioned how great Michael not only was at creating the show and writing the show and directing the show, but producing the show, right? The people that he picked and the children, you know what I mean? Really, these child actors, that's tough. That's tough picking, you know, you don't know what you're going to get with child actors, especially back in that sort of day of Hollywood. And he really did an amazing job of picking some real standouts, you know?
Yeah, I think that might have been David, because one thing with David is he came on the show for the last year. Well, that he was on the show. And so Michael wasn't acting on the show at that point. He came for a guest spot, but he moved from the town, but he was directing and producing. Like he had his hand in every part of the show. So for David, I thought that was interesting to get that perspective of working with him, but not necessarily on set as an actor. But we did actually ask that question. And I thought it was important, as important as Michael was to the show, that Karen Grassley was almost equally as important. So I wanted to get impressions as a unit or individually from our guests about those two. And this is just the part from Melissa. Now, everyone said this on the show. Everyone talked about it on our Q&A. So you'll have to go back and watch this whole thing. The panel ends up being over an hour and 15 minutes. Awesome. We just couldn't stop talking. So this is just a little sample of what some people said, what Melissa and Dean had said about the memories of Michael and Karen. And Mike G's going to run that clip for us.
So much. These two human beings by far had more influence on the person I became, I think, than aside from my own immediate family, than anybody I know. I mean, now I looking back this many years later, I really see how much I absorbed from Michael as a boss, certainly, and watching how he and Kent McCrae put together our crew and how our crew worked, and how, as a kid actor on that set, I was taught to respect every job that happened, from the greensman to the guy who came in to clean the stuff out of the honey wagon, which we all each had one little room on. There were no divas, there were no trailers. We only had Winnebagos twice. Once for Mariette Hartley, who had just given birth, and once for Patricia Neal, who was recovering from a massive stroke. So we were all, it was very, very egalitarian in that way. But Michael was very much the boss of all of us, but he was able to create this incredibly nurturing, as long as you delivered, nurturing environment. And when we did well, we were rewarded handsomely for it. And he for me personally, as a performer, the connection emotionally that he and I had on screen, I don't know that I've had with anyone since. It was very symbiotic. He cried, I cried, he left, I left, I left, he left, I cried, he cried. We were able to bounce that off of one another really extraordinarily. And that happened also in our personal lives. We were extraordinarily close, especially after my own father passed away when I was 11. Karen was unlike any woman I'd ever known in my life. I come from a family of basically comedy writers and their wives who were also incredibly funny, a big, wild, ribble Jewish family of, my grandfather was a vaudevillian on one side, my grandfather on the other side, same thing. I had acrobats in the family and jugglers. We're carny. Karen is not a carny. Karen is a trained, royal, regal, beautiful, elegant. She's like this, to me, she was like this Grace Kelly sort of, I don't know, she had this elegance about her that I'd never experienced. And I remember so clearly as a little girl, just watching her hands and the way she moved her hands and this connection she had to all the things she did. And she was just so deep in it too. She never did a task on film that she didn't complete. If she was plucking the feathers out of the turkey, she was plucking the damn feathers out of that turkey till her fingers bled. This woman was in it. And I had never seen an actor do that before. So much of that now is with me too. A lot of me is sort of a WWKD. What would Karen do? Kind of performer at certain times in my life, especially when I got older and started playing moms myself. Now I'm playing not moms, a slightly older version of the boss.
It's okay. It's okay to say it, Melissa.
I'm a grandmother.
It's okay.
I'm legitimately a grandmother, and I'm actually starting to see things come my way to play people's grandmothers.
Wow.
Getting used to it. I'm getting used to it. It happens. Young grandmother, but still 57, almost 57. Anyway, they will always be my ma and pa. There will never be others. And that is such a unique relationship for me. And I'm so grateful that I had the chance to grow up under their wings.
Dean, besides getting decked?
Yeah, no, I think both of them were exceptional in so many different ways. I think two very different people as human beings in terms of how they presented themselves and how they operated in the world. But when the light was on, when they were in the moments together, I thought they were spectacular together as an acting duo. I think they were really spectacular together. Michael as a director, I think, you asked about what do we remember about him personally. I think, and we all, I think, have felt this at different times. When Michael affirmed something that you had done, you felt like you had accomplished something that was really good. And he was very, very capable of sharing his approval. When he liked something, he could let you know. And I always remember the sort of he would give you this off camera, and you knew that it had worked well. And as Melissa stated, Karen was just so focused, so dedicated, she worked so hard at being in the moment, surrounded by sometimes the chaos of the process of making the show and our crew was very, very focused about what they were doing, but still Karen found a way to be calm in the middle of the storm, and she could then deliver in the moments that she had. They are both huge presences in all of our lives, and could not appreciate them more.
Yeah, I think that the rest of the cast had a lot of similar thoughts, but also individual memories. So go back definitely and watch that part of the Q&A, because I think that the impact of someone with the stature of both Michael Landon and Karen Grassley. Is the gravitas that they brought to this made this. They were the glue that kept the whole thing together. Chance, in addition to, we talked a little bit about Nellie, and we'll get to her later. Who were some of your other favorite characters on this show, and why?
Well, we talked about Doc Baker. He was one of my favorite characters, and I love that actor, Kevin Hagen. He's a great character actor. He could play a villain or a gentle, sweet guy, like he did in Little House on the Prairie. He also was on Land of the Giants as Inspector Kobik, a villain. Anyone who knows that show, but I liked him a lot. And of course, I like Catherine McGregor as Mrs. Olson, who sadly passed away recently, and she was in her 90s, but what a wonderful actor. I liked her and Richard Bull as the shopkeepers. And of course, Charles Ingalls, you know, and as was mentioned in your panel, it's been 30 years since his passing coming up this July. What a big loss to the acting world and directing world, but his memory lives on thanks to celluloid and Blu-rays and streams. And Highway to Heaven, like Mike mentioned, I like that he brought Victor French into that, who was on Little House.
Yeah.
As Mr. Edwards. And the cool thing is about Michael Landon in Little House is Victor French left that show to do a sitcom called Carter Country, which I'm sure no one remembers. And it only lasted 2 seasons. And then after he left to do that, Michael Landon let him come back after he was replaced by Merlin Olsen, who was an LA Rams football player. He basically sort of replaced his character. I thought that was cool that Michael Landon let him come back. Victor French, when his sitcom failed, that he left to do.
I remember that character specifically, again, coming into it from watching Highway to Heaven first. And I can't remember if was it Mr. Edwards who had like this alcohol related episode? Was that in Highway to Heaven or was that in Little House?
Little House in his first episode.
That's another one that really just sticks out for me because it was I was slightly older, you know what I mean? And it was a topic that I was like, ooh, this was intense for me as a kid at the time. And I remember speaking to my parents and being like, what's wrong with him? Like, what's going on here? You know what I mean? Yeah.
Absolutely. And how about Richard Mulligan, who went on to do Soap? He played a Civil War soldier hooked on morphine.
Yeah.
I mean, a very heavy subject matter.
Yeah.
Remember that one? That was a tough episode.
Yeah,
Joaquin hit the issues head on.
Totally. Joaquin Juarez mentions some people talking about other big episodes. Mary losing their vision. You know, when Mary loses her vision. My gosh, one of the saddest. I know.
My crush.
Yeah. That was intense. Lillian Gill said one of our favorites on a happy note was Sweet 16, the episode Sweet 16. So fans chiming in right now. Yeah, feel free to keep shouting out your favorite episodes in the chat.
And you know what cured me of my crush then, not now, but when I was her age at the time, Melissa Sue Anderson, was when she did a horror movie called Happy Birthday to Me. I'll leave it at that. She played the killer in that movie. And that did it for me. I was over my crush when I saw that movie. Oh my gosh. Anyway, I digress.
Yeah, that's not the business end you don't want to be part of, Melissa Sue Anderson. But there you go.
And how about when they blew up Walnut Grove in the last movie back in the 80s? I couldn't believe it when they blew up the town. Spoiler alert. Sorry, guys.
Some of the backstory I heard on that was, I guess, that the lease had run out on the time that they were going to have the land. So it was going to revert back. And they were like, well, if we're going to leave, we're going to leave in a bang. And the blasting of the town is actually them blasting the sets, blasting the town. You know, you only get one take on that. You got to do it right. So you only get one chance to do that.
They could have given tours if they'd worked that out, you know?
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
But it's all part of movies is magic. TV is magic, right? I guess I know a lot of the interiors were shot on sets, but the exteriors that were just basically shells of the houses. I mean, you saw what it looked like, and I don't know, it sells it. Like, it looks like they're out on the prairie. I mean, it has that look to it. It definitely has the feel, and it's a credit to everything about the production of the show, that if they were going to do a scene, they were going to make it as good as could be, and they weren't going to cut a corner, and it was going to be realistic to the degree that they could in 1978, 1982.
They sold it.
They did the best they could.
Can I just add something? Mike was talking about the child actors. How about Shannon Doherty? she joined the cast in the last season, what became Little House: A New Beginning. Of course, she went on to be Brenda Walsh, the bad girl in Beverly Hills 90210.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, she's like 8 or 9, I think, in this series. There's Melissa Sue for you. I meant to put her up talking about her. And she, you could see that, that she was going to be a great actress. I mean, she sells those. And look, they brought in a whole new family. I mean, shows go through those stages where something moves on, and they, there was like a new Nellie Olson with her other sister or whoever, cousin. I'm not sure who the new Nellie Olson was, with a decidedly different bent, I think, than the original Nellie. There's never going to be another Nellie Olson, I think, maybe in any series. The way Alison Armgren played that, and she has some great memories she talks about in the Q&A. So go back and watch the whole thing. But I do want to cue up in particular. I know Rodimus was talking about how everyone was so great on the cast and everyone's so happy and nice. He's except Nellie Olson, Allison, and he's joking, of course, about Allison because she's the sweetest gal ever. But Nellie Olson, maybe the meanest character ever in the history of television. There, Chance.
She became nice though later once she had a kid and got married and settled down.
Got older, yeah.
She eventually became a nice person, which I thought was cool.
Not like her mom. Her mom, and I like the discussion on the show, also on our show, about Catherine McGregor, about how she kind of found that niche to make that character stand out. She had to be a little bit off and be a little bit, not afraid to make fun of herself, and it's a little bit like crazy, but again, you're not like looking for extreme realism. It's still television. You want that character to stand out, and it certainly did. So Rodimus has some fun with how great everyone is, and then Allison talks a little bit about Nellie, and we're going to cue up that right now.
Yeah, and just to lead into, Lillian Gill, who's watching on Facebook, said Nancy gave Nellie a run for her money. We can react on that when we come back, because that comes up as well. So here you go. Take a look.
But everybody also knows that there are no in this group of people. Every one of these people are really interesting people in their own right, are deep people, good-hearted people. And so I want everyone out there who's watching this to know that all the love you send out to this group, it's worthwhile. They're all really neat people. So I just want everybody to know that.
So
Okay.
Allison isn't really like Nellie Olson?
She is. Oh no, she is.
Yeah.
Because Allison, I have one question before we kind of go all around here. Allison, and you guys can chime in if you want. Who's the meanest character in the history of television? Is it Nellie Olson or is it Harriet? Because they were both really mean. Who was meaner? I mean, they're both
Harriet.
mean.
Harriet, because I mean that's the thing. It's like, okay, I was wonderful.
Yeah,
And
I thought.
yes, The Bad Seed was a role model. I used to watch The Bad Seed, that movie with
course.
as a child. Absolute huge influence. I enjoyed playing the villain. I did. I loved villains as a kid. I liked horror movies. I liked villains. Vincent Price, Idol. And so when I got it, I was like, I'm the villain. I thought it was fabulous. But Catherine, she was just doing things that just nobody did. It was amazing to watch her. And she even said once, she said, well, remember, this is all told from the point of view of this 9-year-old, this Laura Ingalls, her books. So
Right.
it's like her vision of this terrifying, like how scary would that be to a child? So she kind of went further. She was like the nightmare version of the woman in the store. But the French, and bonjour, mes amis en France, the French figured it out. France, and they said, no, she's a poor child without the smile. She can't help it. They all felt I was a poor victim because look at her mother. Look at her mother. Oh, la mère de Nelly. That the mother was obviously the problem. And it's true. I've had people say, well, Mrs. Olson, I mean, that was awful. Of course Nellie was like that. What do you expect? So I think she wins. But then, of course, Nancy, the brilliant Alison Balson, who decided to go with the psycho version of the child. Gotta hand it to her. Many people go, well, no, Nellie's me, but shit, I didn't like her. That was work. The kid was a genius. She made you really hate her. And I like her very much. I thought she did a very good job.
Catherine had the wonderful gift of being able to be, you loved to hate Catherine, and that was the gift. And I think she discovered this early on or within the first few seasons, as she told, I'm sure she's told the story to all of us, that she recognized that in order to survive in this environment, that she needed to find a way to be foolish rather than mean. And, and I think this was her when she hooked into the comedic aspect of Mrs. Olsen, Michael, the writers, everybody bit down hard on that because she really had hit a gold mine and she had this enormous capacity to deliver it. And Allison, of course, did this too. I mean, for a Western show to have a shopkeeper and her daughter as the villains is really a unique place to be. And they both did it spectacularly well.
Yeah. I mean, Chance, right from the first time, you probably remember this, she goes to sell the eggs to Catherine, you know, to Mrs. Olsen, and Mrs. Olsen's not going to give her the brown egg, same prices for the brown eggs. Like, she was high crust society and was not going to cede anything. And that was, she set the tone right the first time you met her of what she was going to be like the entire series.
I loved it when she got poison ivy, Mrs. Olsen. That was her comeuppance when they went on that camping trip. Oh man. Tell me we can buy an autograph of Laura Ingalls and Nellie Olsen together.
I think
I'm not trying to put you on the spot. I hope that's in the vault.
Different combinations.
There were a couple of combos on there. Potentially.
I've got to buy that. I want both of them. That's going to be
a good combo,
so
and
awesome.
it leads perfectly into just a reminder to folks that we did the panel last Sunday. You can go back and watch that on any of the channels: Twitch, Facebook, YouTube. They're archived there. But also this Sunday coming up, the 24th, they'll all be doing live video chats. Which, I mean, you get a chance to chat with Allison Arngrim or with any of the guests that were on there on our show. You should do that. All of us are really excited about how great the